Hello and welcome to another edition of MNI TV. I'm Heather Scott. I'm the Washington Bureau Chief of MNI, and with me again is John Shaw, our Senior Congressional Correspondent, and we're going to discuss the latest updates with the fiscal cliff. Now, John, the deadline is fast approaching for the fiscal cliff. We're about a month out from the key deadlines, which, as you know, entail the sequestration, the across-the-board budget cuts, as well as the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts. So what's the latest with the fiscal cliff negotiations, John?
Well, we're watching, I think, one of the most complex and messy negotiations that Capitol Hill has seen in a long time. There were meetings about 10 days ago between the president and the congressional leadership. Everyone left those sessions saying positive things. I think the markets maybe were even surprised at the positive vibes. Since then, there's been a kind of a continuing circling of each other. The speaker and the president have spoken on the phone. They haven't actually met again. I think a lot of people in the markets were expecting immediate meetings. And I think the fact that there have not been these meetings is actually a positive sign. I think those who followed the debt limit negotiations of 2011 realize that when you convene, important congressional leaders and the president in a big room, it actually complicates the negotiations. People make positions, stake out ideas, and it's hard to pull back, it's hard to maneuver. So I think they've learned some of the lessons from 2011. They have the staffs, the White House and the congressional staffs are working. The Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner is coming to the Hill on Thursday to meet with congressional leaders. Again, not in a big group meeting, but meeting with each one of them separately. So I think we're still at a period where the sides are trying to probe what sort of agreement might be doable. There's, of course, as you say, just a month to go. I think people are worried that that's not a lot of time. But I think it's important to realize that these people have been negotiating basically these same issues for almost 2 years. The options are on the table. They've been scored by the Congressional Budget Office. So I think we have probably another couple weeks of really circling and probing. And I'm thinking that around mid-December, you might see the really tough engagement and the beginnings of an agreement starting to come together or not come together. My own view is I think that it's important enough and the parties are not that far apart that an agreement can be put together.
Now, the Republican side has said that they are willing to consider revenue increases, although what exactly that entails is a little unclear. The president is insisting he will not sign anything that doesn't raise tax rates for the upper income earners. So is there hope in between those two positions too?
Well, that seems to be one of the two real complicated issues. And even the speaker again this week has said that he says we're willing to put new revenues on the table. We're willing to have more revenues, but they cannot come from higher marginal tax rates. Republicans have talked about closing loopholes, having a more efficient tax code, saying that would generate revenue. I think a lot of people who've looked at the code carefully do not really believe that you can get huge amounts of revenue through the loophole approach. It's not clear that tax reform is really going to generate all these hundreds of billions of dollars in new revenue. So I think the Republicans are using the right language in terms of saying new revenues, but have not really been forthcoming on how that might actually happen. And I think conversely, the Democrats have said, yeah, we're willing to do entitlement reforms, and yet, the Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, right out of the box, said, well, Social Security, which is the biggest entitlement program, can't be part of the negotiation. They said Medicaid and Medicare can be part of the negotiation, but none of the benefits can be altered. So I think this is part of the probing, where both parties, I think, are kind of holding back. They're also traveling around the country. I think the president is making some trips. The Republican leadership is having people come in. So it's kind of a split-screen world in which they're still trying to get their base roused up and trying to get public opinion on their side, while also exploring what might be an agreement. And I think the one thing that concerns some budget experts is that both the Republicans and the White House have spent a lot of time sort of shoring up their base, saying the things that they want to hear, but have not really prepared their base for the concessions that are going to be necessary. The president has been saying, you need to protect the middle class. but hasn't really signaled that maybe there need to be some adjustments to Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Likewise, the Republicans have said, yeah, more revenues, but we're not going to raise marginal tax rates. So that's where I think people are a little concerned that they haven't really pivoted to the kind of hard decisions that need to be made just yet.
Well, it's still a little early too in the process, so we'll have to wait and see how the next steps in negotiations go, because pretty soon it might become clear that a short-term deal is what will be needed to get at least past the first of the year. And then coming down the pike, of course, there's the debt limit debate, which they'll also have to engage in. So we'll have you back again to explain some more. Thank you again for joining us on this latest edition of MNI TV. This is John Shaw, MNI's senior congressional correspondent, and I'm Heather Scott, MNI's Washington bureau chief. Thanks for joining us.